Another hour of answering any of your questions related to social studies, history, geopolitics, past and present, social sciences, and the humanities. We do this every Friday and Saturday night, been doing it since the summer of 2023. We are nearing our year anniversary. President's Day weekend is our birthday for the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. It's hard to believe that it's almost been a year with everybody. We've had some wonderful streams and wonderful moments. I produce both short and long form content that if you enjoy that kind of stuff about history, check that out. I'm currently doing a series on Chinese imperial dynasties with my video about the Shang dynasty, the first official Chinese imperial dynasty, debuting today. I also do quick facts, day in history videos, and anything that comes to my mind that I love sharing about with all of you. That's what I do in the channel, and that's what I do here in the live streams when I answer your questions about history, social sciences, all of that stuff, both past and present. And that is what we do here at the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. So if you have any questions related to social studies, social sciences, geopolitics, please be sure to ask me, and I will be sure to answer them as best as possible. I don't have my microphone on me today, so I am just winging it. Hopefully you can all hear me well. I've got the lighting going. We're in our new studio. We were forced to relocate a couple of weeks ago. It's been a difficult and arduous process, but we're doing everything we can to keep it up, to provide quality history content for all of you. And during such a difficult time in my life, history, as it always has been throughout my life, has been an area where I can go and I can learn things, and I can just relish the information and the knowledge that I have learned both in the past and in the present, and that's something that really matters to me a lot. And Ryan, I'm so glad that the audio is okay. Spartacus, great to see you as well. No coffee today. I'm running on a bunch of cups, and I left it outside because I was rushing in from my car to set up and get in my smoking jacket, my usual attire, at least for these winter months. Although if I was in Australia, which I am not in Australia, it would be really, really hot, and it'd be hard to wear this right now because it's technically summer right now. So welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel, where we answer all of your questions during our live stream Q&As on Fridays and Saturday nights related to history, social studies, social sciences, and geopolitics past and present. Yeah, we'll see. I know a lot of people can jump in, and if they see a blank, they just see an empty couch, they're not going to be responsive to anything. So we'll see exactly what happens there. Anyone who comes in, I don't want them to see an empty couch. I don't want what they call in the radio airwaves dead air. And we always get somebody new in the channel who hasn't experienced the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel before, and they always have good questions or topics to bring up. We get at least one, and I've noticed this throughout many of our live streams, and we're starting to pick up. So welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel and to our live stream Q&A, part 2 of our Ask Me Anything, where you can ask me about anything related to social studies, social sciences, geopolitics, past and present. This is what this channel exists for, answering your queries into those topics. This is the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. I am not the Friendly Neighborhood Historian, but if you want to be the Friendly Neighborhood Historian, all you have to do is like and subscribe. Yeah, Tyrone, that's hilarious. You're so smart and funny. I didn't know that before. I've never thought of that before. Being a high school and college boy one day, yeah, amazing. So please be sure to like and subscribe, join and become a Friendly Neighborhood Historian. It's as easy as liking and subscribing. And if you love quality history and social studies content, then you are in the absolute right place to be. Make sure to show some love to my moderator, Rodolfo. He'll be here soon. Simon has for those of you who are regulars to this channel, Simon the Bunny, my usual moderator, who does such an amazing job, has a work conflict, and that's why he is not joining us today. Yes, I'm trying not to laugh. Look at me. Trying so hard not to laugh, Tyrone. Just absolutely, just sides are splitting and coming apart while I'm holding onto my poker face just by a thread. That's how funny and hilarious you are. No, this was not a gift from Hugh Hefner, but I appreciate the reference. I have done a video about Hugh Hefner. I do videos about people who were born on this day, people who passed away on this day in history, and what happened, certain events that happened on this day in history. So I think I've done a quick short bio, usually follows that on Hugh Hefner and his impact, obviously creating probably the most well-known and well-syndicated gentleman's magazine in the world, Playboy, which has become a huge industry in adult entertainment and things like that. Interestingly enough, Playboy became famous because it wasn't just the smut magazines that had a bunch of naked women on it and sexual activity, but it also had interviews from artists, advice on smoking and fine alcohol and things like that, and all sorts of culturally relevant things that made it pop out to men for more than just the centerfolds in the middle with the women in their exposed positions. So it is not a gift from Hugh Hefner, but like Hugh Hefner, I have embraced the smoking jacket. This was a gift from one of my Patreons. one of my longtime subscribers, Ballet Peace. And by the way, we do have a Patreon where I give more exclusive content and things like that. So consider joining us there. But yeah, great to see everybody here. It was not a gift from Hugh Hefner, Johnny, but I mean, I'm going in that spirit. It's a smoking jacket. I don't smoke here in the studio like I did in my previous setting, but I do imbibe from time to time in pipes and cigars, so stuff like that's a lot of fun. And maybe if I do an outdoor one, I'll do a video with that. So what do you think about Aryan invasion? Sonia, what are you referring to specifically? Is it the fear of the Aryan invasion now? Is it the Aryan invasion when the Nazis invaded Poland, causing World War II, which I technically believe is World War III, by the way? And here is my wonderful moderator, Rodolfo. Please be sure to show him some love in the chat. He does such a great job holding down the channel. Yeah. Yeah, the bunny is the logo of the go-kart. So in a way, I guess we are recreating Playboy, but for people who find history to be sexy. Because I've got the Hugh Hefner jacket, I have all of that going on. I have my dressing gown, my smoking jacket, whatever you want to call it. And of course, we have our bunny, Simon the Bunny, as our moderator. So the channel is kind of a PG version of Playboy about history. If you find history to be sexy, then you are in the right place. Consider liking and subscribing and becoming a friendly neighborhood historian. It's as easy as that, folks. And there's also social media. There's a Substack where I write articles. So if you don't like the sound of my voice, but you like what I'm talking about and you like my knowledge about history, that's a place for you. And of course, there's also the Patreon. So all of that great stuff. And if you have any questions, comments, or topics you want to ask related to history or social studies, you are in the right place. So feel free to drop them in the chat. Yeah. Ryan is asking, so not being American, what does, in general, FEMA do? I'm thinking of doing a video about FEMA now that it's a big hot button topic because FEMA has been in the news lately with the LA fires and also Hurricane Helene and Milton and its impact on the southeastern coast of the United States. And of course, FEMA has a really bad reputation that doesn't just start with Helene or with the LA fires. It dates back all the way to Hurricane Katrina 20 years ago, which destroyed the Gulf of America coast, if you want to call it that. I don't feel comfortable calling it that, but the Gulf of Mexico, that whole coast was decimated by Hurricane Katrina, and FEMA's response was considered to be lacking. And that's when they first got in the news. I'm trying to remember exactly when they were actually created. I don't know their full history, but basically it is the Federal Emergency Management Administration, and it is a government bureaucracy that manages funds and relief. I think it's part of the Department of Interior, so it's technically part of the executive branch. Here in the United States, you have three branches of government, a separation of powers created by the founders of the American system. You have the executive branch, which is the president, vice president, and all the departments and the federal bureaucracy. So you have the Department of the Treasury, and under that is the IRS. You have the Department of the Interior, which oversees the interior of the country. So you have organizations within these departments which manage certain things. So the EPA and the Department of Interior manages environmental protection, founded by a Republican president, believe it or not, Richard Nixon, of all people. And the Federal Emergency Management Administration is part of that organization, and it handles relief during emergency, natural disasters, acts of God, things like that. So fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, and earthquakes, and other things. So they are in charge of distributing resources, reallocation supplies, and funds to those who have lost basically everything, like a lot of people have in the LA fires or in Hurricane Helene. Donald Trump finds them to be extraordinarily, inept, as do many of the people in his cabinet. There's definitely a libertarian twinge to Trump that wasn't there the first time he was president. And so there's a lot of people who are thinking that he wants to get rid of the Federal Emergency Management Administration and basically do away with it because it has become notorious for not giving out enough resources or having a slow response to things like Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Katrina, and now even the LA fires. So who knows what that will look like as the years go by. Many people, the argument consistently here in the United States between conservatives and liberals is liberals believe, people on the left, usually representative of the Democratic Party, believe that the government programs do not work or have slow responses because they are underfunded, and that the proper amount of funding given to them by taxpayer dollars would actually allow them to do their jobs a lot better, and that they have good intentions, and we should, because they have good intentions, giving them more funds would actually allow them to administer more precisely. So in a liberal mindset or a left-wing mindset, FEMA is not efficient, not because it's a government organization, but because it doesn't have enough money. A conservative or libertarian argument, which represents more of Donald Trump and the Republicans, more or less at this point, generally speaking, would be that Government organizations are slow because they don't have any consequences if they fail. They rely on money that they do not have themselves, and a lot of the bureaucrats cannot be fired. And so, because of this, they are slow because the money that they use isn't their own money. They don't take as much of a risk as a private administration or company would do, and so because of that, they deserve to be blamed for when things go wrong. So this is the common argument between a more bureaucratic approach to government, which involves giving more money to organizations like FEMA, and to a more conservative libertarian approach, which would want to see these programs cut, reorganized, or done away with altogether. And Trump seems to be leaning into that during his second term. He has basically told Linda McMahon, the Secretary of Education, that if she does her job well, her success will be him dismantling the Department of Education and letting the states manage education. So if the U.S. gets rid of FEMA, local states will be responsible, as well as some federal aid, in basically fixing natural disasters and things like that. So anyways, so Ryan, that's an answer to that. We've got some people in the channel. If you're liking what I'm talking about, then you are in good company. You are joining the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, and consider liking and subscribing and becoming part of our legion, more than 6,000 friendly neighborhood historians. So it's good to see everybody. Thank you for joining us. Caleb, hopefully I caught you up. Sonia, how did the early men discover about sex education? That's an interesting question. So you're referring to early mankind. I think it's a natural, instinctive desire amongst human beings to reproduce. And I think for human beings, there's a level of pleasure there that doesn't exist as much in other species. And so I think it just kind of is a natural thing. But sex education was something that was generally left to communities and eventually to families. It wasn't something that was public knowledge where people were being educated on it in all sorts of different ways. And something that has become more and more popular in recent years is the idea of comprehensive sex education, where basically public schools and the local communities are responsible for giving proper education to children and young adults about sex based on an appropriate age level, so that children and young adults don't fall into abhorrent sexual patterns because they are repressed through abstinence. So basically, sex education wasn't something you learned about in the earliest school systems, but has become part of the public school system throughout most of the Western and developed countries, and a huge sign, an indication that you are in a developed country like the United States or Great Britain or France or something like that, is that you have comprehensive sex education available for people in public schools, where they can take a health class or in a health class or science class where they learn about sexual reproduction, not only for animals and plants like they do in biology, but for human beings as well. So I know I just flipped the script. I went from FEMA to sex education, but hopefully you're enjoying what I'm talking about. And besides, I do look like Hugh Hefner, so maybe I should talk a little bit about sex. Do you think we are on the brink of World War III? So Caleb, I technically believe as a historian that there have been 3 world wars already. The First World War would be what Americans call the French Indian War, or is popularly known as the 7 Years' War, in which Prussia and Great Britain and their colonies fought against the French, Russians, and Spanish and Austrians and their colonies in order to defeat in Africa, the New World, Canada, the 13 colonies, and Europe, in order to secure dominance over colonial areas and certain areas in Germany, then known as the Holy Roman Empire, Prussia, and Austria. So basically, that war, for me, because it involves colonies, because it involves multiple continents, because it involves European powers trying to dictate how these colonies and continents were to be run, for me, that is technically the First World War. The Second World War is what was called the War to End All Wars, or the Great War, where the Americans joined at the last minute and fighting with the British, the French in the Western Front with the trenches, with gas masks, poison gas, mustard gas, the first uses of the tanks and airplanes in warfare, and heavy artillery fire, which caused the downfall of the German, Russian, and Austro-Hungarian, as well as the Ottoman empires. And then, of course, World War II or World War III would be the war of the Allies versus the Nazis and the Imperial Japanese. However, if we're to entertain that there are only 2 world wars, then World War III, are we on the brink of it? It's very possible that we could be approaching World War IV or World War III, depending on if you go with my nomenclature or not. Basically, we have a system that is set up that is based on spheres of influence and alliances similar to World War II or World War I, where you have the Chinese and the Russians allying and with influence in smaller countries like North Korea and in Africa, and of course in the Middle East. And all it takes is one domino falling. If Israel does attack Iran, for instance, that could lead to an actual war that the United States would probably be under obligation to get involved with. President Trump just unfroze a bunch of foreign aid and military aid to Israel, America's greatest ally in the Middle East. If Iran attacks Israel and Israel attacks Iran, the U.S. would probably be obligated, along with some of its allies, to help defend Israel. This could bring China and Russia, who are no friends of Israel and have some sort of affinity for Iran, into communication. North Korea could invade South Korea. Kim Jong-un is interested in developing nuclear weapons in order to threaten the South Koreans, who are in political chaos right now, as well as the Japanese, who are American allies. Fun fact, after World War II, the Americans, what you would call World War II, the Americans forced the Japanese to get rid of their military, and only in the last couple of years they've told them to rearm themselves because they're worried about China and Japan. There's also the issue of China wanting to seize Taiwan, or Formosa. That is a huge issue that has existed for 75 years and has only escalated. And of course, the biggest part right now is the Russia-Ukraine war. If the Russians continue to fight in Ukraine and refuse to go to the table for a peace treaty, it could lead to another world war. Now, President Trump has distinguished himself as the peace president, as the peace candidate when he ran in 2024. The Democrats were the war hawks wanting to continue the wars in Israel, the Middle East, and Ukraine. But he himself has just given a bunch of aid to Israel, which antagonizes the Middle East. So the real question is, how closely will he follow that? He has called for the end of aid to Ukraine and for the end of that war. He said he could do it in one day. Well, it's been 6 days or 5 days of presidency, and he hasn't done it yet. So we'll see if he can get the Russians and the Ukrainians to the table. We'll see how far he can put his money where his mouth is. That's obviously a big geopolitical question. He might be the most centrifugal figure in the whole setup if the United States and the rest of the world gets involved in a third, or in my opinion, fourth world war. So I don't think we're on the brink of it, but I think a lot of it's going to be decided in this year. So it's interesting. Jim, thank you. I really appreciate it. It is a nice jacket. Underboss, always great to see you in channel and here. Why was Carlos II so inbred? So Charles II, the Spanish king, was so inbred because the Habsburgs basically were marrying their cousins. The Habsburgs were an imperial family that controlled Austria, the Holy Roman Empire, Spain, and in the New World provinces of Spain during the early part of the 1500s. And the Habsburgs were known for interbreeding and basically marrying their cousins because their cousins had political power all throughout Europe. And as time went on, they became so inbred that they became physically more deformed. And they had the Habsburg jaw, which just continued to extend, kind of like Jay Leno's jaw. And basically, they became the royal imperial family of Europe that was inbred and debauched. And basically, it got to the point where the King of Spain was so inbred that he was actually mentally and physically retarded and could not actually do anything, and his advisors had to run the country for him. So the Habsburgs were known for that. But good question, Caleb. Sonia is asking, why do things, even though religion is reason for a lot of fights, why do things, even though religion... I don't know what your question is. You might want to re-ask it. Okay. Moving forward, I support both the Democratic and Republican Party. They are both good for... Oh, geez. I don't know about that, necessarily. Falcon Rising is saying, I like what you're saying. You don't seem to understand... You're saying you don't seem to understand there's people that have been on the streets for decades because of this crap you're talking about. I don't know what you mean. Are you talking about war? What, Olivia, what's your opinion on the presidential election? Like the most recent one in the United States? I thought it was really interesting. I did an entire series on it. I did a video where I predicted the results, and then another video where I reviewed it. So go check those out, please, if you're interested in learning more about it. I'm not a political channel. I try to be as objective and unbiased as possible, but I knew it was a historic election when Joe Biden dropped out. I thought it was a surprising thing that he dropped out, and I decided that it was my job to cover it as best as I possibly could, and so that's what I did. So, is it true that Mary Queen of Scots' wig fell off and it... Olivia, if you want to check it out there, but I thought it was historic and huge. You obviously had the first African-American woman at the top of a political ticket, and you had Donald Trump becoming the second president to win a non-consecutive term after Grover Cleveland. And I didn't expect Trump to win, but he did, and it was kind of incredible because he won more than we thought. I mean, I thought he was going to win, but I didn't expect him to win by as much as he did. And so he has his mandate. Let's see if he can follow it up. He's more popular now than he ever has been. Let's see if he can follow it up. Right now, he's doing stuff that have antagonized a lot of Americans, ending birthright citizenship, Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense, things like this. I'm not commenting my opinion, but seem to be antagonizing a lot of Americans. So we'll see. And also pardoning the January 6ers. So... Caleb, is it true that Mary Queen of Scots' wig fell off and she was bald or something like gray hair? I thought and was a small puppy, came out of the wig when she was beheaded. I've heard that she was bald. Basically, it was a wig. Basically, Mary, the Queen of Scots, was the Queen of Scotland, a Catholic monarch who was overthrown in the 1560s when Scotland became Protestant. She fled to England, south to her cousin Elizabeth, who basically put her up under house arrest in the Tower of London. And because there were continual Catholic revolts in her name against Elizabeth, 20 years later, Elizabeth had her beheaded. And that's what Caleb is referring to. And Elizabeth I is obviously one of the most well-known monarchs in European history, probably the greatest English monarch ever, and I've done videos about her as well. Moving forward, well, that's the duopoly argument. He's saying voting is basically asking to be trapped in the system, and I understand where that comes from. I don't necessarily agree with it. It's how long does the system continue for? And this is the case anywhere. And obviously, it's a unique experience in human history to be able to vote for your leaders, because usually the leader was there because they believed either God had set heaven or God had dictated it, and they were related to a great ruler from the past. That's how monarchy and hierarchies have worked, and that was common in China, in Europe, in Rome, in ancient Greece, all the way down. You have exceptions to the rule, like the Dutch Republic, or of course the ancient Greek democracy in Athens, but those are exceptions, not the rule. So it's actually a unique experience to be able to vote for our leaders. So I think it's a little bit more preferable, even if the parties are corrupt, which I do agree with to some extent moving forward. And this is the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. We are moving forward, and hopefully you're enjoying. Be sure to ask any question or topic you would like related to history and social studies. I will answer it in a timely manner. I'm really enjoying what everybody's asking so far. Thank God that mental administration are out and sanity prevails. Maybe the world can get back to normal. Yeah, I don't know, Nathan. I'm not going to share my opinion, but thank you for sharing yours. I prefer not to participate in nonsense like voting. That's perfectly fair moving forward. That was George Carlin's perspective, and I respect anyone who respects George Carlin. So, and Pickles, yes, I do. This is, maybe I should change it to the Friendly Playboy History Channel. That might get a lot more views from men. But basically, yes, it's a smoking jacket dressing gown given by one of my loyal Patreonies to the channel. And so, yes, I do technically have a Hugh Hefner look. We don't have bunnies, but we have Simon the Bunny, our moderator, who is our Playmate of the Month. I'm your friendly neighborhood about the SOAR and the educational thing that you think you know. I don't know what you're talking about, Falcon. You're going to have to be more specific. Chris is asking if a man, that's hilarious. Inbreeding in the South, amazing. What a stereotype. Sonia, why do we see the tax system in various civilizations? What are the implications of a tax system? Benjamin Franklin said the only two sure things in life are death and taxes, and I think he was right. I think no matter what you do, even if you're not individually taxed, your goods are taxed. That's what tariffs used to be. Before 1912, the United States did not have tariffs or taxes, but they had a tariff system, which is how they paid their bills. Tariffs are taxes on imported goods that are brought into a country from another country, and so basically that's how a government would raise money. The problem is that jacks up the prices of the goods because there's a surcharge on top of it. So basically the fact of the matter is the governments in different human societies throughout its history, ancient and modern and classical, have decided that and medieval, that they need funds to operate their system. And in order to operate that system with those funds, they need to be paid something, either goods or actual specious cash. And that has been, and so the tax system developed basically because they've decided to provide a service like a military to keep people safe, or roads, or running water, or something like that, and they didn't provide. They cost to provide it, and it costs to upkeep it. So they decided to extract from their people in order to supposedly pay. Falcon saying social media got you twisted. I'm not in social media. Well, I'm on social media, but I use social media for the channel. So thank you. Be sure to follow me on social media since Falcon doesn't like it. Do you think providing employment? Sonia is asking, what do you think about Aryan invasion, and what do you think? And I still don't know exactly what Aryan invasion you're referring to, and no, the job of the government is not to provide employment. So, I'm so glad you caught alive. Great to see you here. KDR, I think World War III started in 1937 when China attacked when Japan attacked the Marco Polo Bridge, starting the Second Sino-Japanese War, and then of course more famously started on September 1st, 1939 when the Nazis invaded Poland. Interestingly enough, a couple other start dates might be December 7th, 1941 when Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Japanese, bringing the US into the conflict, or in 1935 when Mussolini invaded Ethiopia and overthrew Haile Selassie, the emperor. So any one of those dates, 35, 37, 39, 41, intervals of 2 could be used for the start of World War III, which is what, or as you might call it, the Second World War. About, yeah, I guess I have a lack of intellect. That's why I'm always learning. Socrates said, I know one thing above all, and that's that I know nothing. And that was before he drank poison. So we can trust him. China and Russia current alliances as shaky as Germany. Yeah, that's true, Ryan. There's definitely these parasitic treaties like the Nazis and the Russians made in 1939 to split up Poland that the the Russians and the Germans made in 1939 to divide up Poland. It was called the Molotov-Ribbentrop Agreement. The communists and the Nazis actually got along for a while until Hitler decided to destroy the communists and invade the Soviet Union in Operation Barbarossa. So Ryan, a good point. It could be very shaky ground between the communist Chinese, the People's Republic, and the CCP and the Russians right now. I think that there's a lot of alliances like that throughout history where both sides don't agree and don't have the same outlook on the world, but they're using each other for natural resources or political strength. So, yes, Zara, you feel free to observe it. If you're a psychology person, I'm sure you think I'm insane. Yeah, that's true, Rick. Well, it wasn't a world war. You had the Chinese, the Americans, and the Koreans. Wouldn't necessarily call it a world war. Usually, the way I define a world war, Rick, is I don't think the Korean War and Vietnam War count. And I define a world war as you've got major powers with a lot of finance and money and manpower, Germany and Japan, against other sides, Britain and the United States. Then you have smaller countries that are involved in the conflict as well, all over the world. For instance, in World War II, that would be Australia, or France, or Italy. At the same time, you also have regional areas throughout the world in different continents where fighting occurs. The fighting in North Africa, where the British and French had colonies and the Germans were trying to supersede them, is an example of this during World War II, or as I call it, World War III. You have fighting in Burma between the Japanese and the British. You have the Japanese seizing Indochina, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. Obviously, you have fighting in the Pacific. So you've got fighting all over the world, and you have colonial forces fighting for imperial overlords, such as the Indians fighting for the British in World Wars II and III, and fighting in India during the French-Indian War, during the 7 Years' War. It's called the French-Indian War in the United States because it was the French and their Native American allies against the British and their American colonials, by the way. So I don't know if a conflict is quite a world war, Rick, but that's how I define it. It oversees land, navy, air force fighting in different areas with colonies getting involved, and it affects multiple continents. So, thank you, Invisible. I sure will. I hope Trump liberates Canada. I don't know if Canada needs to be liberated. It does have some financial problems, though. Asif, hi, how are you? I'm from the United States. I don't get into specifics about exactly where I'm from in the US. If you've been following the channel and you've known about the relocation I've had to undergo, forced relocation, and our new studio, by the way, with the new lighting and everything, then you have an idea of where I might be. But SF, it's great to see you, and I'm glad you're here. And I try to know about history all over the world, so I don't go into specifics about where I am. My moderators don't even know my name. So, because for me, it's bringing history to you. I'm the channel, I'm the medium for this, so I'm actually not that personally important to it. So, and yes, I am Hugh Hefner's son. Let's just go with that. It is very cozy. It is Cozy Ave, which in California now means after fire. Yeah, that's true, Ryan. We'll see what Trump does when he sits down, but I think he should make it a priority to meet with Zelensky and with Putin as soon as possible. Sonia, why do USA warn about the developing nuclear weapon to Iran, but doesn't do anything to Israel? Who even hide? Well, everybody kind of knows that Israel has received nuclear weapons, and the main reason why they don't do anything about it is because the USA is the one that gave it to them. Nuclear technology in Israel probably comes from the United States. They don't officially have it, but it's kind of it's an open secret that they do, and that the US was the ones that gave it to them. So, Habsburg. Yep, that's exactly how you spell it, Aurelia. Hapsburg, jaw. Look it up. Habsburg jaw. Read the oldest book that you're not reading. How do you say is to attack? Attack. They're attacking your brain, and you don't even. Falcon. I think you just wanted to say the word attack a lot. So, thank you for watching a bunch of my shorts. I do them every day. Not shorts as in pants, but shorts as in short videos. I also do long form videos. I did one recently about MLK. Please check it out. And if you're liking what I'm talking about, you like learning about social studies and history and geopolitics, past and present, geography, everything I'm discussing, like and subscribe. Even if you just like the smoking jacket, I'm just glad you're here. Becoming a friendly neighborhood historian is as easy as doing that. And Underboss is saying, Professor, I'm marrying the love of my life. Jesus sent me an angel. Well, hallelujah. Congratulations to you. And yes, and Underboss has the pin message of the day. Like, subscribe. He is one of our loyal, friendly neighborhood historians, a great guy. So good to see you and so good to have you all here. And thank you for loving the videos. You are not blocked. I am seeing your chat. I'm going through it. There's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot of people in the chat, and I love it. I love all the back and forth, so yeah. It's not technically pajamas. Actually, I have my street clothes on underneath, so a polo shirt isn't exactly pajamas, but ultra fire, this jacket is fire. Stand on your head. Well, if I could. Ideologically, I sometimes do Global, and Global is also a wonderful, friendly neighborhood historian. Rick is saying yes, but that's what America voted for, his agenda, so Hegseth comes with the agenda. Yes, but he could have picked somebody else to be Secretary of Defense, just like he shouldn't have picked Gates to be Attorney General. He picked Pam Bondi, and she seems perfectly fine from a conservative perspective. If for a conservative, she's probably great. So I'm sure that it's an interesting thing with Trump and these sorts of things. He seems to basically talk sometimes like he really appeals to every single person, and then he makes decisions that don't appeal to every single person because the average person doesn't like a Pete Hegseth, doesn't like a Matt Gaetz, doesn't like pardoning the January 6ers. Yes, it's what America got, but they're going to have to chew the bones and spit out the meat, I suppose. Or chew the meat, spit out the bones, I suppose. So, Rick, I understand why Hegseth. I just don't think it was necessarily a strategically good position. And if you watch my political videos, I don't share my opinions about the politics. I just share what facts I know about the issue and how it impacts. And if I see something that has historical impact, like Trump agreeing to release the JFK, MLK, and RFK files, I'm going to talk about it. And obviously with a historic election with Kamala Harris versus Trump and Biden dropping out in 2024, I had to talk about it, so I made that video. So Rick, I appreciate where you're coming from. I'm trying to be as objective as I possibly can. I'm just saying what it seems to me based off of polling and where most people are. They're not with Pete Hegseth, they're not with Matt Gaetz, they're not with the January 6 pardons, and they're not with ending birthright citizenship. Although technically, historically speaking, the only reason the 14th Amendment was created was to give freed blacks the ability to be citizens. It was part of the radical Republican agenda during Reconstruction in the late 1860s. It didn't have any real implications to immigrants until later on in court rulings. Just saying. I'm not saying I agree with Trump's decision to do that. I'm just saying the historical issues. So if I see something that has historical implications, as most politics does, I will talk about it on the live streams. I'll talk about it in the Q&A, the live stream lecture, which we'll be doing tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern. I'll be talking about the history of the 30 Years' War, or I'll talk about it in one of my shorts. So, not pants shorts, as in videos. Sonia's asking, why don't we see a lot of female politicians around the globe? Best time when female were the best, according to you. Yeah, I think during the early modern period into maybe the 1800s, you had women in high roles of leadership all throughout Europe. You had it a little bit in Asia as well, and they were extraordinarily successful. I mean, you think about it, and there's general contemporariness between figures like Mary Queen of Scots, Elizabeth I, Catherine de' Medici, who ran France basically with an iron fist behind the scenes, and Njinga of Angola. And so they're generally speaking, leadership in history has been reserved for men. Most societies have been patriarchal, and there seems to be a coming apart of that. There are more and more women who are joining politics and joining the political process. And I mean, we've got more women routinely in cabinets, in presidential cabinets. I was just talking about Trump with Pam Bondi. Madeleine Albright was the first female Secretary of State in 1997, and we've had, how many? 3 since then? Condoleezza, Hillary Clinton. I don't know if there was a number one, but yeah. So, Aurelia, you are not blocked. I'm just going through the chat as much and trying to answer every question I can. So, Sonia, basically to answer your question, the truth of the matter is, I think now is the best time for women to be alive and be in political power. I mean, we had Angela Merkel for a long time there. We've had women like Benazir Bhutto, the first female prime minister of a Muslim country in Pakistan. You have Indira Gandhi, one of the most famous women in Indian history. No relation to Mohandas Gandhi, by the way. You have Israeli female prime ministers like Golda Meir, and you have women in high-ranking political positions all over the world in the 20th and 21st century. Right now, it seems to be a little bit more male-dominated. I don't think Kamala Harris losing, by the way, had anything to do with her being a woman. I think there was a level of she's Joe Biden, and Biden was unpopular enough for Americans to turn on her and turn towards Trump. So, I thank you for loving the videos. Thank you for loving the channel. So, let me see. Going through the chat. Why do you think that the concept of Messiah in every religion? Sonia's asking. I don't There's not a concept of Messiah necessarily in Hinduism or Jainism. There's the Mahdi in Islam, there's the Mashiach in Judaism, which not all Jews believe, and not all Muslims believe in the Mahdi. And of course, there's the Christian Messiah, Jesus Christ. I think there's this idea of people needing to be saved from something, that the world, that there's this cycle of suffering, death, and loss in this world, and what can save us from that? Maybe it's Jesus Christ, maybe it's whoever the Mashiach will be, or the Mahdi. Perhaps it is meditation and achieving nirvana, as the Buddhists say. Every religion has a way out of this life of suffering and death that we live in. Yes, and George Carlin was very, very good. Hilarious guy. Do you think Trump will make Canada the 51st state, or do you think he's talking out of his ass? I don't like to curse usually, but oh well, it's not even that much of a curse word. And do you think he's going to take the Panama Canal in Iceland because he said he would? I think it's BS. Okay, so again, talking about Donald Trump, Friendly Neighborhood History Channel, we do talk about geopolitics because it's related to history, and history has a lot to do with it. I did a video about, it's Greenland, you said Iceland. I don't think he's ever going to get to Iceland, but Greenland is owned by the Danish. The Americans tried to buy it after World War II to make a bulwark in the Arctic Circle against the Soviets. Harry Truman wasn't accepted on that. I think he's going to be able to buy Greenland. I think the pressure on the Danes is really surprising them. They didn't expect Trump to be this aggressive, and I think he's got a really, really good chance of buying it. The Panama Canal was built by the United States. It had originally been tried to be built by the French, but it didn't work. Teddy Roosevelt who Trump is often compared to, caused a revolution in Colombia in order to get the Panama Canal for the United States, and created the nation of Panama. And I think Jimmy Carter giving it back really weakened his image. I mean, Jimmy Carter, a lot of people are saying amazing things about him, and he has an amazing legacy, especially after his presidency, as a humanitarian, lived to be 100, 75 years married to the same woman, war veteran, obviously a great guy. But obviously part of Jimmy Carter's legacy is his weaker presidency, and I think giving back the Panama Canal was seen as a sign of weakness from Carter. And so I think Trump has a good chance of getting the Panama Canal back and getting Greenland. Canada has huge amounts of economic and social problems right now. If the US took that on, the US would struggle with them as well. I think it's very, very unlikely. I think that's more of a bargaining chip when Trump calls Trudeau Governor Trudeau. So yeah, Caleb, I don't see Trump and the U.S. getting Canada, and even if they did, they wouldn't be one big state. They would make it several different states because Canada's huge. It's the second largest landmass country in the world, and it has a large population, much larger than any state. I think it might be smaller than California. So, anyways, at the same time, what else was I going to say? So yeah, I think Trump has a good chance of getting Greenland, one that even the Danes did not expect. The U.S. has already occupied Greenland and bought the Virgin Islands from Denmark. So this is not new, us getting land from the Danish. But, believe it, the Virgin Islands once belonged to the Danes. It's going to be a rough process because there's this idea of it that died with the end of imperialism and the end of all the empires, the British, the French, with all their colonies, that acquisitiveness is bad. Gaining land is bad from other countries. So I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know how Trump can create a neo-acquisition idea that's actually pretty good, but we'll see. I think he's on his way, though, and it's going to be interesting because history rhymes a lot, and history is not a set-in-stone thing where everybody's going to get free and countries will, because Greenland isn't technically free anyways, and neither is the Panama Canal. But the truth of the matter is, you think that these countries head more and more towards self-determination. Trump's kind of interrupting that. And that's what history does. Nothing's inevitable. Yeah. Is it true Hugh Hefner was a criminal? I'm sure it is true. I mean, you think about the sexual legacy. You think about what we know about human trafficking. I don't know if Hugh Hefner had his fingers in that pie, but it's very possible that he did. But yes, I like the smoking jacket too, Jim. Thank you for noticing that. Can I tell you a fun fact? Alive, you can tell me anything you want. Sonia is asking, which is the best ancient civilization according to you? I think of the Romans only because we know so much about them. I'm doing my video series on the Chinese, and I find them to be so fascinating. But the ancient Chinese, we don't know as much about them, probably because we actually use bone tablets that they created, the Shang Dynasty, to learn about ancient China. The Romans are technically in the classical period at the end of the ancient world, but I think the Romans, we know so much about them. Obviously, they're so integral to understanding the West. I'm a European historian primarily, so I think that they're really up there. China, I love learning about any type of history. People ask me all the time, what's your favorite type of history? And my answer is usually very much the same, the type that I'm learning about right now. I like to consider myself a history chameleon. Whatever history I run into, I actually really enjoy. So, and yes, dapper is the word. Thank you, Underboss. One question, do you think Trump is good or bad? I think that the historical narrative is yet to be closed on Trump. I think he made the greatest political comeback in American history. I think he's an extraordinarily important historical figure, and I think that that magnitude is only going to increase. And in history, we don't necessarily say that figures that we haven't determined yet are good or bad. Now, it's obvious that someone like Abraham Lincoln, despite his shortcomings, was a good person. And someone like Adolf Hitler, despite the fact that he painted beautiful artwork, which is true, was a horrible person. We can say that with certainty because of what the results of their actions were. But a lot of historical figures sit in this liminal period between being considered amazing and being considered awful. And I think Trump, despite some of his nasty rhetoric, despite some of his accomplishments, we're still figuring this out. Is he the Winston Churchill of the 21st century, or is he a wannabe dictator? Is he a wannabe Francisco Franco or Ferdinand Marcos of the Philippines? We don't know yet. So, Freshly, great to see you. I understand where you're coming from, Budding, and I don't blame you at all for feeling that way. That's a political perspective. I don't share my political perspectives, but if you think Trump is a problem, you're welcome to come to this channel and talk about it, especially in a historical context. And if you think Trump is amazing, like a lot of people on this channel do, you're allowed to think that too. How do you remember all those names? I read, I study, and I use the memory that I got because I emphasize what I love, and I love this. So, Sonia, thank you for asking all the great questions. By the way, everybody, if you're liking what you're learning about history, geopolitics, social studies, and social sciences, like, subscribe, do all of that great stuff. Take a look at the pinned message from my wonderful underboss. Sonia, why do you think only China is doing good in manufacturing, but other countries are failing? I think there's even though the service sector is booming. I think that the Chinese are a developing economy, very close to being fully developed, and part of a developing economy, if you look at world history, has been manufacturing. So Great Britain, the United States, and France during the Industrial Revolution were developing countries compared to modern standards. They were developing in technology, they were developing in manufacturing, they were developing in political and financial wealth, and they were developing in medical care. And China is kind of near the end of that stage, and manufacturing is always a huge part of a developing nation. Once a nation reaches developed status, it shifts from manufacturing to service. That's why the US and Great Britain are more service economies now than they are manufacturing. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, save the gap. That's Rodolfo's favorite thing about me is the gap. And I'm doing this. You should like and if you don't like the gap, Budding, like and subscribe, because then I can get monetized and then I can afford the Invisaligns to fix this. So, thank you, Global. I appreciate that. Do a GoFundMe. Kingdom of Italy, hello. 164 years old and you're here. Great to see you, Kingdom of Italy. Hi, Dave. Great to see you. Thank you for joining us. Keep revealing to me. Is it my nose? It's my nose, Eros. Yes, I do have something on my face. It's called my nose. May the Blessed and Immaculate Virgin Mary, Mother of God, bless you all. Thank you. I will take that in what spirit it is given. Sonia, what do you think about the psychological impact on the Palestinian people of the Gaza war? I think there's going to be a perpetual hatred of Israel that's only going to get worse, and I think that Israel, unfortunately, is not looking down the road, and in 20 years, these people are going to be terrorists just as bad as Hamas. At least some of them. Or they're going to be okay with a Hamas-like organization. So I understand why Israel is doing what it does, but history is full of unintended consequences. There's always a trade-off in economics and in politics and in geopolitics, and this is the trade-off. So, oh geez, from the beginning, I don't even remember where we were, Aurelia. Yes, Northern Hemisphere is a good guess. Stay humble, make as many guesses as you want. I'm just glad you're here. Not from a major city, not from the South, Midwest, possibly based off clear pronunciation. Stay humble, I appreciate that. I like your guesses. What do you, Sonia, another great question. What do you think, which is the most important thing for the human developed in early civilization? I think it's obviously the ability to create trade, because through trade, trade necessitates economic growth. It also facilitates the exchange of goods, the exchange of weapons, the building of a society, and the need to create an army to defend your trade routes, to defend the wealth that you've acquired through your trade. So I think trade necessitates wealth, it necessitates a military, it also necessitates classism, because you're going to have the wealthy and you're going to have merchants, and they obviously have to fit into your society one way or another. And obviously, if you're going to trade, you need to produce things, so artisans come from that. And if you're going to trade a lot of things, you're going to need to produce a lot, and so you're going to need a working class, a proletariat, which in the ancient world were all slaves. Stay humble, good guess, but I'm not going to say yes or no. I don't know when Andy Samberg started doing YouTube. All I know is that I ignore him because he's not funny. Sorry. I'm not. If you don't like my comedy opinions, I'm here. Be here for history, not comedy. Andrew, India fought for the Nazis, Germany, and we're in France. Andrew, that's not true. India was a British colony. It fought for the British in World War II, or as I like to call it, World War III. Do you think religion is a human needs, or does it have anything else? Religion is just part of how humans express themselves and develop ideas about who they are. He's got a velvet robe on, looking all Playboy Mansion. G. Lee, yes, we were talking about that. This is Playboy. I don't have any playmates, but I do have Simon the Bunny, and he is our playmate of the month for the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. Ella Costello, this is not Timu, it's Friendly Neighborhood History Playboy. USS Liberty was a failed false flag operation. Yes, because the Israelis blew it up, hoping that the Americans would not find out and blame the Egyptians, and they did. Men are forced to go completely hairless. Tyrone, that was actually kind of funny, and I appreciate you making a history pun. Kind of gross, but still, I give you props for that. And thank you for staying as long as you have. Usually when trolls come on, they make a couple of jokes that are usually very crude and potty humor, and then they leave. But Tyrone, I appreciate you staying just to find another joke that was actually a little more funny. What the hell is up with the Hugh Hefner rope? It's a smoking jacket. They actually originated in Great Britain during the 19th century when British officers coming back from the Crimean War would take Turkish tobacco and smoke pipes and cigars after dinner. So they would put on a smoking jacket so they wouldn't get the dust and ash and smell on their street clothes. Not Chobaboo. These aren't opinions, but thank you for calling them that. Invisible, that's a good point. Is humanity created in God's image, or is God created in humanity's image? That's something historians are trying to figure out. I'm tired of it, but I just roll with it. You got to roll with everything. Gerald, great to see you again. Yes, and this is a Saturday evening. It be whatever you want. I'm as long as you're subscribing. Mike, have fun at church tomorrow. Jenny, do not do that, at all. So, by the way, the Nazi symbol, the swastika, is actually a Hindu symbol of meaning peace and life, turned upside down to mean chaos and anarchy. It is also a cross bent backwards. What do you think is going to win the upcoming prime minister election and be sworn into the office since Trudeau dropped out of office? I don't know. I think it's Pierre Poilievre's to lose. I don't know that the Liberal Party can recover in time. Greetings, Lemon. Great to see you. A-Talk, don't be rude. Be nice to each other. China is certainly fascinating, and that's why I do a series on China. I think all humans are equally incredible for at time one for all and for yeah. I understand where you're coming from, Global. If you're liking what I'm talking about, my answers and the history I'm discussing, like and subscribe. I'm at 2% on my battery, so I need to get a charger and charge up, so I might be taking you all with me for a second, but just keep going. Adolf was indeed a vegan. Many of the Nazis, and I don't know why he was a vegan. No, I don't think I'm Winston Churchill. I know I'm not Winston Churchill. I did a video and a live stream on Winston Churchill, and he's a lot cooler than me, despite his plenty of problems. And yes, Aurelia, this is a free speech space. People can basically say whatever they want. Niffin, that's an interesting comparison. I think that Trump gets Hitler all the time, and everybody's political enemy is Hitler. But I think if Trump is dictatorial, if he is an authoritarian, if we find that out, if he tries to stay in power after 2028, then he might be more like a Francisco Franco, who was more benevolent than Hitler, but obviously still repressive. So, yes, that's definitely true, Global. That is exactly how it happened. My girlfriend, actually, that's exactly the story. I was driving with my girlfriend, and I was talking to her about the kings of England, and I said, I could tell you every single king of England in order, and queen, from the Norman conquest to the modern period. And she said, before you do that, could you consider doing a YouTube or TikTok? And I was like, well, I just want to share it with you. And then one day, President's Day weekend, so I was in a historical mood because it's President's Day, I got this idea in my mind and obviously came up with, just did a couple of short videos. You can go back and watch them. They're not that good. I was walking the dogs. I hadn't lost all the weight I have, but maybe the history is good. I didn't know you could do a 15-second or 60-second thing. Now they have the 180-second thing, which I think is weird. But anyways, yes, my girlfriend basically got tired of me going on and on about history. She loves hearing it. She loved hearing about it, but she asked me to make a YouTube channel, and at first I didn't want to do it, and then I did it, and I'm so thankful to her for that. We'll see what the land grab looks like. What's your econ metric that you think is undervalued or not used? I don't know what an econ metric is, Blair you, but that's an interesting question. Are you talking about like Bitcoin and stuff like that? Felix, how's Vance? I don't know. I don't know enough about him. He's obviously one of the youngest vice presidents, second Catholic vice president in American history, probably the next president if Trump does a good enough job this time. Who knows? It is a one-party rule in China. It's the People's Republic, the Chinese Communist Party, which isn't necessarily that communistic. And I need to go and charge. We've got 10 more minutes on the live stream, so you're gonna get a quick view. This is my studio, by the way. Just a little bit of a background there, and I'm gonna grab my laptop so I can charge. But, anyways, Okay, all right, laptop. So turn that on. Plug in the phone. You know how it goes. You know the drill. Okay. Right. So thanks for keeping with us. If you're enjoying what you're learning about, consider liking and subscribing and all that good stuff. This is the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel as I bend over awkwardly. Sorry about that. Let me see here. 1 second. Sorry, you have to stare at a blank screen for a couple seconds. I'm here though. I just don't want the feed to die on us. Okay. And there we go. Let's see, is that charging? Okay. Apparently it's not charging because it's not long enough. Okay. All right. Oops. Okay. So, we planned this, by the way. We thought it'd be funny to give like a little organic view of me coming and going and setting things up. Okay. So, now we're charging again. Fortunately, I had to unplug my light for that, but hopefully everyone can still see me. All right, so let me see here. Why isn't that working? All right, I see why it's not working. That's just lovely. Okay. So, where were we? I'm trying to see where my most recent question was. Oh, we've got people arguing in the chat. That's always so fun. Let me see. He's in his studio in Global. He's reading all the chats, so he's top of. I'm doing my best to catch up with the chat as best as I can. Okay. And let me see here. Okay. All right, now I'm officially charging, and I'm going to turn on my lamp here so you get a little bit of light from me. So, sorry about that. We're back. But time to bow down to Mother Russia. I don't know about that. We'll see. I don't think Mother Russia is doing too well in the Ukraine war. So, what is your second favorite topic besides history? I'd say politics. I'm a social sciences kind of guy, so politics, geography, things like that. If you're wondering about my hobbies, I play trumpet and guitar. I love music, obviously. I love dance, things like that. Caleb, why was Hitler against tobacco if he was on a cocktail of drugs? I don't know exactly. Haven't read a lot into that. I think the effort of the Nazis and the Hitler Youth and the Aryans was basically to make as attractive as a people race as possible. And Hitler, who was short with brown hair and brown eyes, advocated the Aryans, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, all of that great stuff. Is pure Germanic people who had existed for thousands of years, supposedly, and obviously a way to make them look as phenotypically attractive as possible is to get rid of tobacco, particularly cigarettes, which became very common then. So, as a technologically inferior group, ever successfully invaded another group? I mean, you can think of, I don't know about invasion, you can think of the guerrilla warfare in Vietnam and how the Jews during the Maccabean revolt were able to withhold the Greeks. So if it's their native land, yes, that has happened. What is the real reason behind worldwide homelessness? As far as Israel and Hamas, that is a sick codependent relationship. Absolutely true, Flora. The worldwide homelessness epidemic, which we're seeing a lot of in the United States, for instance, I think it's a lack of economic advancement. Obviously the global economy has allowed a lot of people to be lifted out of poverty, but those on the margins still remain on the margins. And I think they've been kind of left behind. So let me see here, trying to catch up with the chat right now. Could you clear up my understanding a little? Is it true that Israel is kind of the only ally of U.S. over there and surrounded by hostile? To some extent, yes, that's true. I mean, the UAE and other countries, even the Saudis, are open to recognizing Israel and allowing it to exist peacefully. Egypt does that, but it's the only fully democratic country. It's the only fully permissive of LGBTQ rights and things like that. So there's a lot of that. As there's background noise. So let me go and close this. So the truth of the matter is, Shinji, Israel has obviously a position in the. Israel obviously is kind of surrounded by people who aren't fans of it. And basically, it's not as violent with places like Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, Syria, but they haven't recognized Israel's right to exist. And that's a huge issue, because if they don't recognize Israel's right to exist, they are okay with subsidizing or participating in terrorist activity to destroy the nation of Israel, usually funded by people like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Palestinian Authority. Okay, so, and yes, Flora, that's true. Trade transmits culture, absolutely, way to preach. What's the earliest known instance of basically, as long as humans have existed, Caleb, I should know, I'm related to Hugh Hefner, humans have had a desire to depict sexual activity in a way that is pleasurable, especially to men. Oil or electric? I don't know. I mean, electric is made from fossil fuels, not oil exactly. Can there be such a thing as capitalistic fascism? I think that's what people would say. A lot of fascism is a right-wing ideology because it allows businesses to produce, but the thing that people do not understand is that a lot of authoritarian governments, be they communist or fascist, advocated a command economy where the government declares this is how much is going to be produced and this is what you are required to do. In fascism, the businesses are allowed to do that on their own. In communism, the government takes over the production of these things, which is actually more destructive in some ways. So I don't know if you can have a free market that is in a fascist state, but you can have some capitalism. What's Elon's role in the new House, Felix? Well, he's in charge of Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, which obviously refers back to the meme of the Doge dog, and there's the Dogecoin and all of those jokes. But Felix, basically, Elon's job is to be one of Trump's main advisors, to influence his political decisions, and to hopefully improve America's space program to the point where America can actually reach Mars and things like that. So. Yes, Kevin's right. Like the live, y'all. That's the right thing to do. Let me see here. Jesus Christ is coming back soon. Are you ready? Are you? Tyrone, I think I know what your answer is going to be, so I'm just going to not answer. Everyone says swastika, swastika. Swastika is the way to pronounce it in German, and I don't like saying that a bunch on YouTube, but the truth of the matter is it is a bastardization and profanation of a Christian and Hindu symbol, and the Nazis were not Christians, although some of them practiced Christianity. The counterman German Christian Church, which was basically Lutheranism wed to Nazi ideology, and many Catholics who went along with it as well, have a lot of answers and explaining and apologies to do, and have been making them for the last 80 years. Hard to believe World War II ended, or World War III, as I should say, ended 80 years ago this year. So, do you think good education alone can reduce unemployment? Yes, Sonia, I was talking about this on a live stream yesterday. The truth of the matter is that good unemployment, good values, good practices, good culture can do a lot to improve financial and economic rights and opportunities. Who will India side with in another world war? They hate China, but are part of BRICS and a lot of business with Russia. They may stay out of it. They may stay neutral. The Swiss kind of did this in World War II. The swastika wasn't just Hindu, it was in basically every religion and country. Yep, they wore swastikas, and that's why the Germans actually used it, because it was a Viking symbol, and it's in Buddhist culture because because Buddhism comes from Hinduism. Siddhartha was an Hindu prince who became the enlightened Buddha. By the way, in fact, the Nazis, Hitler and some of the Nazi high command did not have any affinity, obviously, for Judaism. They really thought Christianity was weak. The narrative of Christ dying and sacrificing himself does not really sound like an Ubermensch. What they thought was a really powerful and strong religion was the violence in Islam. And they worked with some of the Palestinian and Arab authorities in the Middle East, this is a fact, worked with the Nazis to collect and round up Sephardic and Mizrahim Jews to send to the Nazis. I'm on live all messages. That's what I'm doing. That's what I always do, Global. At the beginning, it's top chat, and then I switch over. If I'm missing anyone, I really apologize. The Nazis ruined the reputation of a swastika. Yes. Well, no, it's not just that. They turned it upside down. So peace and order, like the Hindus had it and the Jainists, you turn that upside down, what does that mean? Chaos and anger and anarchy. Those are the opposites of those things, and those are the things the Nazis believed. There's a very Hobbesian state of nature idea based on Thomas Hobbes' theory that humans are wild and crazy and dangerous and violent without government and without authoritarian regime. And that's what the Nazis and the fascists all believed in. I am not at my grandmother's house. I'm in the Friendly Neighborhood History Studio. Location is undisclosed. Show. Nostradamus Q says when Mars and Mercury are in conjunction with Aquarius, who are 3. Well, let's see if he's right or not. Heck, that sounds like a good enough date. I've done a video on Nostradamus. Yeah. Are you able to change your mind regarding history without bias in regard to certain countries, individuals, events, which might change your view even though you don't want to? Yes, and it's happened a lot of times. I've had to admit a bunch of things I didn't think. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but Nathan, it's always great to see you, by the way. Yes, I've had to do that. And there's a jet flying overhead, so I'm sorry if you can't hear me really well. Sonia's asking, do you think we should be scared that Hitler was convincing Germans about the Jewish mass murder? And how does he convince the people? I think we should always be scared by that narrative. It should show how impressionable humans are and how mob hysteria and mob madness can happen very easily. So yes, absolutely. And yes, it is a smoking jacket. Thank you for catching that, James. Yes, I agree with you there, Global. A real man cleans a restroom Tuesday and Friday. Does Israel have room? Sorry about that. So does Israel have room 40s? I don't know what you mean by that. Free Palestine. Ferg, free it from who? Free it from the Israeli occupiers? Possible. Free it from Hamas? Definitely. Orion. Israel is a place. So is Palestine. There. Israel is an apartheid state. Compared to what? What is an apartheid state? Define the word apartheid. I mean, I understand why people say that. I understand, but the truth of the matter is the Jordanians and the Lebanese are just as discriminatory against the Palestinians as the Israelis. And when the Palestinians in Gaza were lining up in Rafah, and Israel was about to attack Rafah in this war, the Egyptians sealed their borders so they wouldn't let Palestinians in. Those are Muslim religious relatives of Palestinians not letting them in. You talk about apartheid, you got to talk about those places too. And I understand Israel's not shutting off utilities and things like that and hurting the infrastructure. But I think that we need to either change the way we understand apartheid or change the way we understand Israel and Palestine. So thank you, Caleb. I appreciate that, but I'm not running. Yes. Ferg, I understand where you're coming from. I appreciate where you're coming from, but I don't think you're correct. And we can agree to disagree. I'm just glad you're here and able to share your opinion. Sorry, Hugh. I'll give it back to you after the live stream, I promise. What's your opinion on the Tate brothers, Andrew and Tristan? The less I talk about them and the less I know about them, the better I'll be as a human being. What do you think about the U.S. leaving the Paris Agreement? I think that the U.S. has done well in fixing a lot of its environmental issues, so I can understand why people would want to leave it. But at the same time, I think that every country in the world is part of it, except for a couple in like Africa and the Middle East. Every developed country is part of it. I think the United States leaving it is kind of is going to make a lot of people question America's standing in the world. Favre, no, I am not. The smoking jacket has got me what? That's weird, Al, but thank you. Free Kurdistan from the Arabs and the Turks, Iranians. Yes, Dublin, nobody ever talks about the apartheid that the Kurds have struggled for a long time and how they haven't had a state. It's always just the Palestinians. And heck, I believe both groups should have a state. I have said many times on this channel that I believe in a two-state solution. I just believe that a two-state solution can't happen when you have terrorist activity like Hamas. And Israel is open to the two-state solution and should be more open to it. So I've criticized both on this channel all the time. But Dublin, you are absolutely right. Hack, NATO exists solely as an anti-Russian entity. Putin had no other option to invade Ukraine. I don't agree with that. NATO was originally created to stop the spread of communism and to unite the Western Bloc against the Eastern Bloc, but NATO's purpose now is basically European unification to get people using the euro as a currency and create a European common market. So, Galaxy, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to pin your message. Sonia, why do you think Jews are so rich? Ethics, culture, dedication to hard work and education. Best thing to leave at scam. What scam? G-Man, I'm doing my best to be as much of a critical thinker as possible. I'm going to have to shotgun these because we're over an hour. Does religion define borders? No. Governments do. I'm Catholic and live on a divided Irish island. I know about separation based on ideas. Yes, that's true. But it's not religion. It's culture and ethnicity. And who was there 3,000 years ago in Israel? Iran will always stand with Palestine, Kurds, Pakistan. Yes, they are all marginalized people, but I don't, or the Irish, you said. Yes, the Irish. I understand why the Irish have that perspective, and it's very understandable with Ireland also having apartheid and obviously being oppressed by the British. There is an understandable position you're coming from, Ferg, and I'm glad that you're sharing it with us here so we can learn more about Ireland and the Middle East because of it. And that's how history has implications for how we understand the world today. Why the less you talk about them, the less you know about them, the better. You'll be as a human being. They got freed and it was decided by the court. I don't know what you're talking about, Caleb. Yes, Sean, I agree. Taco Bell everywhere, even though it's not good for you. There's no justification for the existence of the Israeli state. Uh-huh. Okay, Thurg. I'm glad. I thank you for sharing your opinion. We Cook is asking, is homosexuality a sin? According to Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Whatever happened to Howard Dean? Oh yeah, he kind of disappeared after running for president in 2004. Carlisle, I don't know what the Nisar Square massacre is, but you're gonna have. So there's a lot of things I don't know about. So I'm gonna have to look into that now. Do you think there will be any peace in this world? I think we work on it. I think humans love peace, but they also get ready for war all the time. Did you go to college? Yes, I have a bachelor's and a master's, both in history. Kurdistan will never be free. They are the rebel group and are pawns for the West. We bait them. Interesting. It's been something that people have talked about for a century, and there's been a lot of neglect from the West and oppression from the Middle East, so I understand that. Do you believe in aliens? I think there's got to be something out there. Look at how big the universe actually is. Is Red Dead Redemption video game historically accurate? I haven't played it, so I wouldn't know, but it looks like kind of just more like based on Clint Eastwood movies than actual Wild West, which wasn't as wild as we'd like to think. And hello from Birmingham. Great to see you. And who made the Pyramid of Giza? That'll be our last question because we're over an hour. I appreciate all the participation, all the great questions. If you like what you have talked about, even if you don't agree with everything I've said, that's perfectly okay. I'm doing my best to be as objective as I possibly can. Like and subscribe. Join the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. Consider following me on Substack and all of the stuff. So, Pyramid of Giza. I think it's probably, I think megaliths all around the world. You have large slave populations. It may take a while, but you're able to do it. So we'll see. G-Man, I don't believe I am, but thank you for telling me that. What if I told you you can believe in Satan and in aliens and not believe they're connected? So, Jim, thank you so much. Texas, always great to see you. Well, Nathan, I'm not using it to justify. I'm just saying that there is a historical case for Israel existing, as is there a historical case for the Palestinians having a right to that land. You look at any map before 1948, and there was a Palestine. But if you look at a map from 3,000 years ago, there was a Jewish state which was called the Davidic Kingdom. So why can't we have both? Why not both? USPMC killed 17 civilians and wounded 20 in 2007. Interesting. The Nissan massacre, where was that? Bye, Friendly. You're the best historian. I truly think you're very smart, and you should run for president next election. Well, Caleb, no one's going to vote for me because I think I'm too moderate and too fair. But yeah. I think the pyramids were made. Sorry, Sonia. Basically, you had a large enough population of forced labor to be able to create megaliths over a long period of time. Baalbek in the Mesopotamian region is an example of that, and the pyramid at Giza is an example of that. And there's pyramids everywhere, all around the world. There's more pyramids in South America than there are in Egypt. There's ziggurats in Mesopotamia. There are pyramids in China. Obviously, the idea of building very high, tall structures in a certain framework is obviously extremely important to ancient peoples. So, in Iraq, well, that's not surprising given how awful that war was and what a mistake it was for the U.S. there. So, Carlisle, I thank you for teaching me something today. I really appreciate it. So, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for joining us. We went a few minutes over, but that's always good. And tomorrow, join us at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join us for 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we will be discussing the history of the 30 Years' War, the most important war you don't know about that changed the world history as we know it. So join us then, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow for our live stream lecture, where it'll be less chat interaction, but more me talking, and maybe at the end, if things go well and I have time, there'll be time for some more Q&A. So thank you so much. Check out the channel, short and live and long form. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate seeing you guys. Real World War I. I'm going to do a video. You know what? I'm going to make that a live stream lecture and go into exact detail about why I think that. But I don't know about the 30 Years' War. But that's definitely an important war, and I'll be talking about that tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Yeah, when people will do anything. Gap strong. Really, Dublin, I'll have to look into that. I don't know, Niffin. We always say we won't have a war, but then it happens. So I hope not. I'm likely to think not, but we'll see exactly what happens. But anyways, take care, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Like, subscribe, all of that great stuff. Become a friendly neighborhood historian just by doing that. Check out our Substack. We're going to eventually get the social media handles for Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon into the chat so you can join us there. But it's usually the handles Friendly Neighborhood History or Neighborhood History, and you can find me there. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a wonderful Saturday night. Stay safe out there, and love history. Bye-bye now.